Welcome back, movie lovers. I'm Josh.
I'm Chris.
And with our powers combined, we are Garner Brothers Movie Lovers. We are back today because we got to go to an early screening of Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. It is a movie about Dungeons and Dragons. There's a bunch of people, and they live in medieval times with monster people and dragons and dungeons, and they steal stuff, and then they have to go on quests, and it's good times.
So the film is written and directed by John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein. They helped write Spider-Man: Homecoming. Film stars Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez. Rege-jean has a smaller role in it than the previews would suggest. Justice Smith is in it, Sophia Lillis. Hugh Grant is wonderful. Chloe Coleman and Daisy Head. Those are main characters.
And a really fun cameo that I was not expecting that was wonderful. What'd you think of the movie?
So it's really fun, and you don't have to be a fan of the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game in order to enjoy the film. But my thought is, if you are familiar with the Dungeons and Dragons game, there will be lots of little in-jokes and things like that you will probably get that we didn't get. I've played a little Dungeons and Dragons, but I am in no way like a big-time player.
I would love if there is one person who watches this review could give us some insight into that at all in the comments section and tell us about some of the juicy Dungeons and Dragons moments in that movie that went over our heads, because I wish we could provide that to you, but there was one moment where I thought, I bet people who love Dungeons and Dragons right now are just peeing their pants a little. And I'm kind of missing it.
Having played the game a little bit, I did feel like this movie was very true to that experience. The fetch quests and now you have to do this, now you have to do this, and all the items, the weapons, and the artifacts that they have, and the spells, and it all felt very authentic to me.
And then it all comes together in a really great, cinematic third act. It doesn't follow the traditional film recipe, but it works well because it's a Dungeons and Dragons movie with fetch quests and stuff, and it kind of really comes together quite nicely. Really fits the Dungeons and Dragons and the film experience together in a really complete and fun way.
Well, and the other thing about all the scenes that lead up to that, there are a ton of fun scenes in this movie. Set pieces that are just great.
Lots of practical effects, apparently.
Yeah, there is. And just little encounters they have along the way, each of them just really funny. There's and really fun. There's a great encounter with a dragon. There's a great scene in a graveyard. There's a great scene with a carriage. There's a lot of really fun scenes.
And a lot of fun characters, too. This is a really good example of having an ensemble cast that works fantastically.
Yep.
There are a big handful of new characters in this movie that we've never met before, and by the end of the movie, you love them all. There's lots of different story arcs happening for individual characters, and
there are some great films that have been made that have teams like this. That it's a first time you've ever seen this team, and you still like all of them. At the end of the movie, you're just
every one of them feel like filler characters.
Yeah, every one of them has their own distinct character traits, and multiple characters undergo character arcs. It's really
meaningful,
really nice to see that. Other examples that I can give you are the first Guardians of the Galaxy film or Star Wars: A New Hope. Those are really high bar films. Yeah, Ocean's 11 was not bad. There are a ton of people on that team, and so some of them maybe don't have quite as much character, but
there is 11 people, but there's 5 that are really good.
But in this film, I didn't feel like anybody was wasted, and Rege-jean, even though he only comes in for basically one scene in the film,
steals the show.
Makes a huge impact. He really does. He steals every scene he's in. He's wonderful.
Kills it. I really hope if they make more that he comes back.
I bet they will. I
And
bet this is going to be a smash hit, and there will be
They've got to.
a lot of
They've got
Dungeons
to.
and Dragons
They're
films.
stupid if they don't. I wonder if he was in the movie more, if he would still be as enjoyable.
Could be one of those characters where...
I hope he shows up
Less
in
is
every
more.
Dungeons and Dragons movie for like one scene and then just walks away in a straight line off into the distance.
that would be pretty fantastic.
This movie feels grand and epic and like, where was this filmed? Everywhere. It was filmed
must have been
everywhere.
New Zealand.
Maybe. Yeah, it
looks...
feels...
It looks and feels like Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
like as far as the fantasy epic, sense of it all. It looks fantastic. There's a lot of comedy. It is like an action comedy. See, that's the thing. I don't know who this is not going to appeal to. If you like fantasy films, you'll like this film. If you like comedies, you'll like this film. If you like action movies, you'll like this film. Like, there's a lot here to appeal to a wide variety of people. If all you like are treacly romances, this is not your movie. But everybody else will enjoy this. We could say great things about every single person in this movie, but I just want to say, I love Hugh Grant.
Yeah.
As a bad guy. Like this and Paddington 2, he's just a really good, funny bad guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's really funny.
He is really funny. Michelle Rodriguez is always the toughest person in the world in all of her movies. And in this movie, she is the toughest person in all of the world. But she's more than that. She's also a mother who cares deeply for her child, who, is also comedic relief throughout the movie, and she's more than just that thing that she's been typecast as for every movie, and she's awesome. This is the best movie she's ever been in, and I love her in this movie. The whole cast is great. Like, after we talked about her, I just keep thinking about everyone else in the movie. Everyone in this movie is great.
Yep.
It's great.
Yep.
It's time for Good, Fine, Bad.
Good! Fine. Good. Bad. Ugh.
Fine.
That's bad. That's bad. That's bad.
Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
I think this movie is good, great, fantastic fireworks.
Oh, yeah, baby! Cue the cheering children. It's time for Good, Great, Fantastic Fireworks. This movie's awesome. You should go see this movie. It's, I think, as well. Good, Great, Fantastic Fireworks. This is the best movie that's come out so far this year, in my opinion.
Easily.
Yeah, it's actually... No other movies have come out this year. This is the only movie.
There are other movies that I know people have enjoyed that we haven't gone to see.
Not until... After you've seen this, you'll forget about all the movies you've enjoyed this year. This is the only one.
I think Paramount has done very well for themselves.
Yeah.
Like, this movie, I predict, will do extremely well. And they did Top Gun Maverick, and that was like the runaway hit last year. And they're doing Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning later this year.
Tom Cruise does a big jump.
So they are doing real well. It's just nice to have a movie that's fun and funny and well-made, entertaining, enjoyable, and oh man, one other thing that I really love about this movie are all the setups and payoffs. There's no
we can't
item
not mention that.
or spell or thing that happens in this movie that you didn't understand beforehand. Like, they introduce things earlier in the film, and later in the film, when they happen again, it doesn't feel cheap, it doesn't feel unearned. Everything is set up previously, and when the payoff happens, I mean, sometimes at the end of a movie, something happens and you just roll your eyes and like, that's ridiculous. They're just undoing all the consequences from previously.
The last two movies we've reviewed.
Yes.
Really guilty of this.
But this movie, not only did it not make you feel that way at the end, but it was expected. Like, they set it up in such a way that it was inevitable that it happened the way that it happened in the film. And that's the best way to end a movie.
Not
it ends
only-
in the way that it had to end. It always had to end this way.
It wasn't always expected. There were some things
That's
that
true.
were set up in payoffs that were expected. There were some that I had no inkling during the moment that it was being set up that it would be coming back at the end of the movie. And when it did, it made perfect sense and it was awesome and I loved it. But there were other moments where other things that kind of kept getting brought up and I was like, that's going to be important later. And it was. And it should have been. And it was.
This is not one of those movies that shows you things can happen at one point and then forgets that those things can happen later
Like
on.
the Eternals that had a really great idea and ruined it. Here's our review for Eternals, if you want to watch that and hear the good idea that they set up and didn't pay off because they're dumb.
But there's so many movies where, you know, a superhero has a superpower that would save the day at a later point, but they just don't use it for whatever reason.
Yeah, you
Right?
have to... It's really important, especially when you're doing movies that have magic and they have things that can be cheats when you're telling a story, to set up rules. Because even if you have a fantastical fantasy movie, if you break the rules that you set up, it doesn't feel real. You can have fantasy movies that feel real because they establish rules and they follow them. There is one specific spell that's used in this movie super well from a staff, and I won't spoil exactly everything that happens.
Yeah, it's great.
But they have this staff that could be used super cheaply, but they set up the rules at the beginning and they keep those rules, but they're able to do really creative things with it that are really fun to watch. Anyway, there's dragons
And dungeons. And Chris Pratt playing the lute.
which
What's not to love?
is the best scene of the movie.
Oh my gosh.
That was really funny.
That is a fantastic scene. This is going to be a movie I love to rewatch. Because every time a
gonna
new
be a
scene
really
starts, I'm going to be
quotable
like,
movie.
oh, I love this scene. Like, every scene felt like that.
Anyway, you should go see this movie in theaters. You should go see this movie in theaters with me. I'll go see it again with you right now. Let's go. I'll probably see this movie again.
I will.
Yeah, I mean in theaters. I'll probably
will.
see it again in theaters.
Yeah, me too.
It's that good, and it's worth it. So, go out to the theaters and see this movie, and the cast will even thank you for doing so when you're there.
Hey, you know, everybody cheered at the end of this movie.
Everyone did cheer at the end of this movie, and I started the clap again!
Fun movie.
It was fun.
Go see it.
And like this video. And that's all. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
There were, like, people wearing cloaks in the theater, carrying wizard staffs, so...
Yeah, we should have brought one of those people with us home to be part of this interview so we could ask them about it.
Special guest reviewer, Glyffindorf here.
That would have been awesome if we just brought some random person and used their character name.